Hello, welcome my healthy habit highways to another Monday check-in. Now, hope you had a fantastic weekend. Hope you didn't get rained away too much. And I'm very interested to learn how you guys are going with your carb habit. Now, for some of you, this will mean eat more carbs. For some of you, it might mean eat a little bit less carbs. And for some of you, it just might mean becoming more aware of what is a carb and what foods contain those carbs. Because realistically, you're not eating 30 grams of carbs, right? You're eating a banana and an apple. So knowledge is important here. And then as always, we want to create that awareness and we want to create that constant application of your knowledge. Knowledge is power. I don't really believe that. Applied knowledge, that is power. So last week we talked a little bit about how carbohydrates are our main source of fuel. Now it's true that you can use fats as fuel, and we can even use protein as fuel, and we can use alcohol as fuel as well. However, the carbs are the most readily available, and actually if we use protein and fats as fuel, it still will get reduced to the smallest form as a carb. So everything kind of comes into that glucose and that gives us fuel. So that's why it's so closely tied to your energy levels. If we don't eat enough carbs, we don't get enough carbs, we might be continuously tired or very easily fatigued. Anybody who's ever done a very low carb diet might remember that feeling of after a day or two of eating very low carbs, if you're used to a higher carb intake, you can feel like you hit the wall. The man with the hammer is clobbering over your head. So part of the challenge of this habit is really finding out how are you feeling. Like those internal cues that we continuously talk about, very, very important. A lot of this program is to deal with how do you deal with food, because I can eat certain stuff and be absolutely fine, and you might eat the same exact things and it just doesn't work, doesn't feel right, and vice versa. Some of you might eat some things that my body would not deal with very well. So there are no real hard and fast rules in this, guys. The main challenge and the main skill to learn is listening to your body and understanding what the trade-offs are. Now, the big question, of course, is how much carbs? As it says in the habit that you've all read, of course, is a cupped handful of carbs is 1 serving. Now, how many servings? That is something that's up to you. The way I would recommend it, if you go through your servings now and you find out that you have 3 servings of carbs in a day, but you also have very low energy levels, or sometimes you just feel your energy levels crash during the day, is let's add a serving of carbs in a day. Not one at every meal, but just one before you usually feel that you're starting to crash. So if you have that 3 o'clock dip at lunch, have some extra carbs, have an extra serving of carbs. If you know you do very poorly on carbs and you try to stay away from them with all your might, I would still recommend adding some carbs, but adding the good kind of carbs. There are a lot of forms of carbs, right? There's a lot of forms of just sugar, simplified sugar, and a lot of processed foods are high in carbs as well. That's not exactly what we're after. We are after what we call the low GI. GI stands for Glycemic Index, and that stands for how fast those carbs get absorbed by the body. Now, something with a high GI, like a teaspoon of sugar, gets into the bloodstream and gets absorbed pretty much straight away. That gives that spike of energy and then that crash. Those of you who have kids will know that feeling very well. Like they're going absolutely nuts, absolutely ballistic, and after that they are feral because they crash. We want to stay away from that as much as possible. There are a lot of negative health benefits from having those peaks and crashes that we're trying to avoid. So foods with lower GI, glycemic index, give that flow of energy much more stable. Now, these things tend to be unprocessed foods. When we look at carbs, we might look at potato, sweet potato, fruit itself, even though a lot of people say, oh, it's very high in sugar, which is true, but it also has a lot of fiber, which makes the sugar being absorbed a lot slower. So again, there's not that real big spike that we get when we just have a can of Coca-Cola, for instance. Brown rice better than white rice. Brown bread better than white bread. White bread again is processed, brown bread is less processed. So that's an interesting thing to think about and have a play around with. Now, as always, guys, if you want to have a chat about this, if you need to have a call, if you need some personal time with your coach, let me know. Happy to plan in some time. I hope everything's going well, and I'll talk to you soon.